Hello, and welcome to the AB Relationships Podcast. Your hosts are Angela Lazariki, psychologist and psychotherapist, and Boris Hertzberg, psychoanalytic therapist and couples consultant. We talk about relationships and discuss some ways in which we can help each other in relating better. It is a space for sharing, discussing, and brainstorming common relationship difficulties, as well as real-life issues presented by our guests. Please note, this is not therapy, nor is it a substitute for therapy. Enjoy, as we are about to begin.
Hello. Welcome to AB Relationships Podcast. This is Angela.
And this is Boris. We are the A and the B in the AB relationships.
That's right. That's right. Welcome to today's episode, which has been changed quite significantly. We were going to have a guest who sadly had to cancel because of work. And so it's just Boris and myself for today. How are you feeling, Boris, about what just happened?
Yes, it's actually a very interesting subject to discuss, maybe a subject of abandonment, because we have been basically abandoned today. And so we found ourselves being without a guest and without a possibility to talk about relationships.
That's true. I like that we can still discuss what is relevant to what has just happened, right? But which is also very relevant to relationships, right? Always the fear or the risk of abandonment is something which is very strong with most of us.
Excellent. Let's do it.
Okay, let's get started. So, what would you like to start with? Like when you think as a therapist, when someone comes to you and you can detect that, okay, there seems to be an abandonment wound here, what are some of the first things that come up for you?
It's an excellent subject. I'm thinking about myself and about our situation of the guest not showing up. Asking myself, what do I feel? And it basically reflects what many of us would feel being abandoned on feeling abandonment. So it could be, I have some fantasies about that. It could be, for example, about me being unimportant in the life of this person. Yeah, we set ourselves an appointment, to record our meeting and to talk about relationships. Yeah, and now I feel as if I am and maybe us are not important for this person, and so it makes me feel insignificant. Even though I don't take it personally, but still I counted on something and then I was rejected.
Right.
And and the second thing I think about is the unpredictability of abandonment. Because basically, if you know, or if one knows when they will be abandoned, it's not that scary. Because if you know when you are to be abandoned by someone, you probably know the reason why it will happen. For example, this person might go abroad, or this person found someone else. So this deadline, though unpleasant, it gives you some structure and some understanding why it happened. But if abandonment happens out of the blue, without any specific reason, I think it makes us feel in a very anxious and unpredictable state, which is hard to handle. So basically, that's my answer, talking from myself, from my perspective. And I think I also see it quite a lot, in sessions in therapy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. Thank you for sharing that.
So what about you? Since we are in this together, how do you recognize and deal with abandonment?
Right. Well, I'm trying to kind of see whether what I would do personally is what I do during therapy as well. And I think it is the same thing, actually. which might go without saying for many therapists, but I'm always kind of like wondering, wait a minute, are the things that I'm saying to my clients, the way I go about difficult situations, is that what I do with myself as well? Do I practice what I preach? I don't always, if I'm being completely honest. I slip a lot of the times. But if I'm going to talk about abandonment, kind of coming back to your question, it will make what I feel makes a big difference is how, when, under what circumstances. I feel like the context makes a big difference in how I see it. You made some really, really good points about, how we feel, how it makes us feel like people do, feeling insignificant, feeling like, okay, this person just got, or take it or leave it. It doesn't really make such a big impact in their lives. Yeah, I totally understand that. You spoke about the risk and the unpredictability, and that is one of the most painful aspects, I feel, right? Because it can also be such a shock when it comes completely out of the blue. And we know that a lot. We can even kind of touch on what that shock is. But in a situation such as the one we have right now, as you also pointed out, yes, it is a lot. It has a different impact, a different intensity, right? Because this guest has no reason, I guess, to lie. So I do believe what they have said and that why they're not available. So I take it as, life happens. Perhaps they didn't plan ahead. Perhaps, it is a difficult week at work, a lot of things. So the stakes are not as high, if you like, because I have seen in my life, but as well, obviously with my clients, the closer that person is to us, obviously the stakes become higher and higher, and the impact of the abandonment is going to get deeper and deeper.
Angela, tell me, don't you think it's rationalizing? If we are explaining to ourselves why this person has abandoned us, and they have their reasons, and take any relationship that we start to give grounds why this person did what they did, isn't it doesn't it take us away from actually dealing with these feelings of being abandoned, or with this disappointment, with the anxiety? What if no one else will ever come and appear in our life?
Yeah, excellent question. Yes, and I often wonder that as well. Maybe I feel like there's a fine line between rationalization and perspective taking sometimes. And I think, and tell me what you think about this, because this is a good thing that we come from different approaches in therapy. So I would be very interested to hear your take on it, because for me, what will make the difference between rationalization and perspective taking is how much time and how much space we give to the emotions that will inevitably come up. So in recognizing, for example, that, okay, this person, got carried away with work, or it's nothing personal, it happens, life gets in the way, blah, blah, blah. That is the cognitive part of it. But as you said, and I completely agree, there are going to be emotions that are going to come up: sadness, disappointment, anxiety. Will we find another guest? What does that mean? Disappointed because, we were looking forward to it and it didn't happen. So what we do with those emotions, namely, do we acknowledge them? Do we sit with them or not? I think will make the difference, because in rationalizing, we usually just stick with the explanation, with the cognitive part, and we don't really pay attention to the emotions. We don't want to, we don't notice them, for whatever reason. In taking account of different perspectives, if I can call it that, I don't know if I'm even calling it, the right way, but I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. We also acknowledge the emotions that are there, and we're able to kind of also a different perspective, potentially the perspective of the guest who didn't show up. Like, oh, okay, maybe, I am really disappointed. I'm actually feeling stressed because we might not be able to find other guests. I'm noticing all these emotions. I'm acknowledging these emotions. They're here and they're valid. At the same time, I know that life gets in the way. Maybe this wasn't as important for this guest as it was for us, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that makes sense, the way I'm presenting it.
Yeah, if I am understanding you correctly, you are saying the difference between rationalization and perspective taking is that when we rationalize, we just talking in a very, how do you say, in a very practical way about something, and we are just denying our emotions. And when we take perspective, it also includes acknowledging our emotions of being sad, of being stressed. So we are letting ourselves both understand the other party, the one who abandoned us, and also be in contact with our emotions, meaning not to abandon ourselves emotionally.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Excellent. To expand a little bit on my last sentence, and thinking about self-abandonment, that when we don't feel what's going on inside of us, what takes over us, what emotions we are experiencing, I think it's double abandonment. It's both the person who abandoned us, and we are also abandoning ourselves.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. And I'm really glad that you're bringing it up, because we don't often, most of us at least, don't often classify that as abandonment. What we do with our emotions, how we treat ourselves, what we acknowledge, what we don't acknowledge, all these things, we don't necessarily see it as abandonment, self-abandonment, as you said, very important. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
I also think about, I'm thinking that this is also an act of self-care when we don't abandon our emotions. For example, if our guest would have written to us before that they are sorry they can't make it, and they understand our disappointment, and if they would acknowledge our emotions, our feelings, I think we would have felt, better being acknowledged. And I think it's we can project it on any abandonment, because when you asked about my therapeutic experience, what I am observing with clients, when people feel abandoned or they have experienced abandonment, there usually is an empty space where emotions could have been. It's like this abandonment leaves people devoid of emotions. This abandonment happens. Actually, abandonment is synonymous for me with ignoring someone's emotions, someone's feelings. Because if you acknowledge someone's feelings, if you are interested in them, if you see whether the person is sad or angry or unhappy or happy, you can encourage them to be happy and just to point out this emotion. Then basically the abandonment doesn't happen, because there is a bond between you. But abandonment, as I see it, it's void of emotional contact. That's why it's so important, not to abandon ourselves and acknowledge our own emotions, even if the person who has abandoned us didn't do that or doesn't do that.
Yes, perfect. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Yes. And we're also kind of making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Like you said, it's an act of self-care. And I completely agree with that. And it's not something that is usually, again, seen as self-care, but it is profoundly important. And in doing so, we are also, because I always believe that with our behavior and with the way that we treat ourselves and others, in this case, how we treat ourselves when, making sure we're not self-abandoning, we're also kind of modeling to other people of being a different way of holding ourselves, supporting ourselves, being with ourselves, right? So we can be kind of like a model for maybe healthier behaviors, healthier ways of being.
That's what we are doing because we haven't abandoned each other.
There we go.
I'm thinking about, the first reaction to abandonment. When someone abandons us, the natural response of ours could be to abandon someone else, just to pass it further. So we could have said, yes, Boris, Angela, our guest has abandoned us. We are worthless. We don't want to be, to do it anymore. We don't want to communicate, or we can wait for the next person to come. But it's symbolic that we reacted to abandonment with actually something opposite.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of didn't abandon ourselves or each other in this sense, right?
Exactly. And how can we, put it to the perspective of relationships. When someone abandons someone else.
It is a very painful situation, right? That is undeniable. But having ways and knowing how to not abandon yourself after someone has abandoned you is key, right? Absolutely critical. So staying with yourself in practical ways and emotional ways, right? From the very, very simple as, and this might sound a little bit dramatic, but we've all seen it, especially as therapists, right? As that I'm going to get up, I'm going to continue with my routine, I'm going to take a shower, I'm going to do my groceries, I'm going to continue going to work, which might sound very menial, but they are so important when we're in a crisis, those kind of routines. So from a practical point of view, not abandoning ourselves and our needs. And if we have other dependents on us, if we have like pets or children, right, even more so, but emotionally as well, allowing ourselves to feel the grief, which is very normal, allowing ourselves to feel the anger, which is very normal, the disappointment, very normal, all these things. That would be the emotional, not abandoning ourselves.
Excellent point. I totally agree. I would also add that we encounter someone abandoning us, maybe to take a minute to step back and not to act upon impulse to abandon other people and to shut down. For example, having relationship problems doesn't mean that we have to avoid our friends or we have to avoid our family or someone for whom we are important. So even being abandoned, it's important not to project this abandonment to the whole world, but really to be able to decrease it to this specific person and not to devalue all the other people who care about us, who love us, and who we love.
Perfect. Yeah. Because it's something that happens a lot, right? We shrink. Beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent point.
Yeah, it's a good point to end it for today. And thank you for our guest who hasn't come. And thank you for everybody who spent this time with us.
And thank you, Boris, for sticking around so we can have this really nice chat and this really nice discussion and exchange about abandonment wound.
Yes, Angela, and thank you for not abandoning me. And
we have...
Yeah, sure, go on.
Beautiful. Okay, what is the ending bit that we usually say?
Don't know yet. It's probably not a song that we sing, but it's probably thank you and goodbye and hope to see you again. If you liked it, give us a like and share. And,
okay. Right, sorry.
Yeah,
right.
Let us know how you deal with abandonment. What are your secrets?
Absolutely. That would be very interesting to read if you have a moment to write down the comments. That would be super interesting. And thank you for listening in. We hope that you join us in the next episode. Until then.
Yeah, thank you and goodbye.
You were listening to the AB Relationships Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends and subscribe to be notified of the new episodes. If you would like to become our next guest, please leave your details in the form in the description. If you have any questions or would like to talk to the hosts, please also refer to the description.